I gotta remember that this camera starts recording before as soon as I start streaming. As soon as I hit streaming, apparently it starts streaming on my side. Here I am drinking out of my glass bottle instead of one of my owl cup. 9 o'clock came up on me rather quickly. Hello, Tote, and hello, Meandering Mystic. And so I'm just kind of, hello, Tamu. And I do believe your last name is Nagina. So, because I know somebody, I don't remember who, and if I did, I wouldn't be important anyway. But if it's not Nagina, it's Ingina. But hello, Wizard. Well, a few minutes. This stream has only been on for 2 minutes, Wizard. So please pardon my drinking out of a glass cup. I mean, out of a glass bottle. I just don't. I have so many nice cups, and I forgot to bring one in. I didn't even roll myself the cigarette that normally gets me through my close to 2 hours of streaming. That's the beauty of a good tobacco. If you don't smoke it, it goes out. Thank you, Tamu. Oh, there is nothing really wrong with a jar, but I mean, I've been an entertainer all my life, so there's a certain amount of, show business that I like to get into. Not into artifice, but, if you have, like, nice things and it is pleasing to the eye. Just like I dress for stage. I always have dressed for stage. One of my biggest problems, not with the music, but with the presentation of the grunge movement, was, they look like they just got done hanging out on a street corner. Now they're on stage, and I've always considered the stage to be a special place. First of all, it takes some balls to get on stage, and then I don't know. I think it's fun to play. Hello, Deborah. It's my intention to make it a good transmission, and we'll see how it works out. I'll mute my mic for a moment while I clear my throat. And that certainly works better. So, anyway, hello, Foxdray. I always like to just kind of take, not be real quiet or anything, but just kind of like not get to the point right away. And hello, Oswald. Oswald, I'm pretty sure, if I recall, I think my memory can serve me well enough that you had spoken about the owls. And I listened to a Freeman Fly and a Higher Side Chats with Mike Cleland. And I enjoyed them. So thanks. Those YouTube had been suggesting those videos to me for a while, but when you kind of said, hey, take a look at this, I took a look at it. So thank you. Hello, Christopher. And I felt it was good research on Mike Cleland's part. I didn't feel there was really a whole lot of overblown imagination. I thought he treated it really well. I really enjoyed it, actually. Hey, CW. CW. I gotta tell you, I have to acknowledge that you know, when you were going after, when, you know, you kind of put on your, you know, from your lawyer place, and you went after the nonsense of, you know, the trademarks and the rest of the stuff from the blue chicken crowd. And of course, as you were going after blue chickens, you happened to pick up the interest of Groovy. And when you invited her on a show and she took you up on it, boy, did things really turn out great. And I just really thought it was great. You know, there was Cliff High, there was Dark Journalist there. I thought that Dark Journalist picking up on kind of like doing, you know, he was doing the X series, and all of a sudden he did this show, and I think he was inspired by you. CW, I think that, you know, you kind of going after the trademark thing and just the nonsense of it really lit a fire in some important places, and a really good fire. But when Groovy joined the proceedings last night and pointed out beyond a doubt what kind of people these types are, I think that's when it became a real human interest story. I think that's when it really got some gravitas. And of course, as we all know, this is kind of like a take two on it. The last time was we don't need to rehash anything, but I think that this time it can be done well. And there's, you know, again with Dark Journalists, you know, again when people with a lot of subscribers start covering stories and they start mentioning your name as well, CW, things are happening. And I just, you know, and again, I really love and care for Groovy, as a lot of people do. And so for her to be able to, on take two, to I feel really get some traction, and not only that, but a certain, let's call it a moral center. I mean, as I put in your comment section, you know, the trademarks and stuff like that, there could be some, you know, well, maybe this and all kinds of sophistry. When it comes to the kind of treatment that she got and who these people are revealing themselves to be, doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room, not a whole lot of room for sophistry. Hello, RC. So, you know, again, you know, spirit moves us in mysterious ways. Ooh, CW speaking my language. That's very thoughtful, and I'm touched by that. Thank you. Yeah. And I mean, again, what I'm liking about it, just, you know, people have, you know, a long time have been, you know, the word unity is a little bit cult-like, but, you know, to be kind of on the same page, you don't have to be on the same word, the same sentence, but to be on the same page. And for, you know, to have CW, and as we all know, Moose put this on the map some months ago, but it kind of, you know, in a certain way, to me, what happened to Moose in many ways is what happens to JLL. People, somebody might have a really great message for everybody and has great points to make, but because of people have personal likes or dislikes about this, that, or the other one, and then the story at the heart of it gets lost in personality things. And so and fortunately, although, you know, we all like to, you know, if the things that we initiated get some credit, but the most important thing, at least for me, because I've certainly started things and not gotten credit for things, like in other endeavors, not so much online, but little pieces online too, in forum settings or whatever. The most important thing for me is always, if I have an idea that I feel I've originated, that it gets talked about and starts to find its way into language. That was the real purpose anyway, was to start a conversation, to start a discussion around an idea, or to insert some language that I would feel is good to have in the discussions. And if I don't, if I don't get the royalties, you know, figuratively speaking, for what I've done, that's really not such a big deal. When I really think that it's the story itself that is more important, or the idea that's important. So let me just read a few things here. Yes, Persian scribe. Good point, CW. And again, you know, there are ones. I think that the Sophianic narrative is probably the most important narrative to land in our timeline. But the messenger seems to have some image problems, and some of it, you know, the words have been defined differently these days. Words like racist. Doesn't take much to be called a racist anymore. Once upon a time, you had to really be kind of throwing out some hate, invective, and, you know, I mean, you kind of had to really show yourself to be an ignoramus to get tagged with that. Not in the current climate. It doesn't take much to get called a racist. Yes, and to me, one of the important truths in this whole blue chicken cult thing is the kind of people they are. And I almost said humans, but that's, to me, some of the behaviors are not what I consider to be anthropic. Misanthropic for sure. And that's, to me, what really gets laid bare with Groovy Bean's story, is the kind of people that are telling these stories, not the stories themselves, but the people telling the stories. And if the people telling the stories are these kind of people, well, then that should certainly put the story itself under much greater scrutiny. You know, whether or not, we don't, and this is very recent history with a paper trail. This isn't like, oh, was Corey really in the military, or did he really do this? We don't need even to go into all that. We can go into just what happened in the last year or two, and with the exchanges, and and again with the cyber paper trail that Groovy was sharing. There's some evidence, and it's not really. It's, to me, it's a lot less open to interpretation. To me, there's like a human side, and there's a sociopathic side to this story. And what gets revealed when Groovy tells his story is how sociopathic the blue chicken people are. And, a big part of the Sophianic narrative is identifying the sociopaths and psychopaths that make the earth unpleasant. So CW, like again, you kind of started the ball rolling just with the trademark thing by coming in and saying, hey, I know a little bit about this legal stuff, and you broke it down really beautifully. It was really great. You lit the fire of Dark Journalists, where he dedicated an excellent show to it as well. And then, but to me, the most important thing is you brought Groovy on, and then with the audience that was, the people that were in the live chat last night while Groovy was presenting her evidence and her story. Hello, Groovy. I think really was a uniting moment where there's no room for who has more subscribers here. It's just like if you have an audience, get the story to them. This is the story. In this whole kind of truther community, this Groovy story has a lot of truth. And I think the truther community could do with a heaping helping of some non-GMO truth. Hello, Soul Traveler. Yeah, I feel that what I've been doing with the Can't You Hear Me Gnostic and now Telestic transmissions has been about what I consider to be an important truth, but it's not obvious to me. The truth that you are offering about the kind of people that are running the blue chicken cult. I don't think anybody's going to try and trademark the blue chicken cult. So I feel I feel very comfortable using that phrase all I want. So yeah. And so the truth that you're offering is something that really touches. Everybody can relate to. Everybody can relate to coming with a good heart and being abused for it. Anybody can relate to that. Not everybody can relate to the planet is intelligent and the creator of our genome. That's not something everybody wants to deal with. So I just your story, Groovy, to me is the story right now in the truther community, and the, let's say, the phonies and just even intelligence insertions, just the whole dirtying up of the space where we're all trying to find out about who we are and where we come from and our place in the cosmos. I mean, this, to me, the Sophianic narrative is all about that. But for some people, that's not what it is. They're going to be looking to UFOs. They're going to be looking to this, that, and the other thing. And so I'm just, I'm very aware of where passion can be found. And boy, the passion was, and I'm talking about wholesome passion. And so, and not only the passion, but with, because you were truly hurt in the process and terrorized. There's a pathos that is pretty common to everybody. So to me, any place we can pull down the pants of people making the earth a miserable place and taking advantage of other humans, that's an important story. And again, Groovy, your story has the ability to really engage a lot of people. It's not part of metaphysics. It's part of life on this earth. And the desire I think we all have to make the earth a better place. So anyway, that's kind of like my opening words. Seeing CW pop up kind of certainly presents that. Seeing Groovy pop up certainly presents that. And of course, having Tote, also Moose, being here and having attempted to do this earlier, or at least, and especially supporting her, because Groovy was really doing it on her channel. And then things, it just was a different time. It was a different time. Apparently, this is the time. And so that's why I was wanting to give credit where credit was due. And we cannot, as much as we, sometimes our sense of self might not like to do it. When somebody like Dark Journalist with his subscriber base starts to pick up on a story that kind of started, in our little circuit over here. That's a certain, I find that has a certain power, a certain potency to it. And it's a good thing. It's almost as if like you had a problem, if somebody had a problem in their neighborhood and then some major network decides to cover it, well, that would be probably a good thing, provided they told the truth. The news not getting the facts straight is nothing new. As a matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson has a piece of has something I read, I don't know, some weeks ago. I might have even saved it on my Minds thing, and he was taking the news apart. Okay, this is like 250 years ago he was doing this. The news has always had its own agenda. Starting a newspaper is not for somebody with limited funds. And sometimes people with wherewithal like to have an impact on shaping the psyche of others. And newspapers and their owners have been a big part of that psyche shaping. Yeah, I mean, last night's live stream on CW Chanter's YouTube channel with Groovy Bean was not only an amazing stream, but the live chat. The kind of discussions happening and who was present. Again, there were some people who what they say reverberates because a lot more people hear them say it. I mean, I would venture to say that there's probably a good chance that the average CW chanter supporter might in many ways be a stronger supporter of CW than the thousands of people who support Dark Journalist. In other words, I think that his support, that people who are behind him are really behind him. But again, people like the Dark Journalist have, a bigger crowd. But instead, what I like about it is that there's all these currents are now kind of coming into one stream, and I see some beauty in that. The things that can bring us together will not be when we're like-minded, but when we're like-hearted. And that's really what last night's stream, and to me, the heart of this story is about. Our hearts, and not our minds. Things like trademarks, that's more of a mental sphere thing. But abuse, cyberbullying, doxing. And again, doxing, it's one thing when somebody online calls you names. I grew up, I'm old school. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never harm me. If I went home to my parents, all sobbing, oh, somebody called me such and such a name, they'd be like, oh, please, grow up. I mean, they'd be, just like they called your name and you're bringing that to me. Go back outside and deal with it. Hello, sunshine on Sophia or Sophia. So to me, name calling, it's not pleasant, but it only hurts as much as we let it hurt. But when doxing starts happening, when people do things that then allow people to do things like, even if it's as stupid as calling a pizza that you didn't order, and you have to tell somebody, no, I didn't order that pizza, that's being harassed in the real world. That's not name calling, that's harassment. And then if you should call in something and the police show up, that's potentially fatal. Potentially fatal. When police show up at a house, you never know what might go wrong. Your dog might bark at them and gets a few bullets. All right, so doxing is when it's no longer name calling. It has become real world. And when it becomes real world, it becomes ass-kicking time. So there. So as I have a few notes, I'm hoping they still apply. Interestingly enough, after last week's live stream, I got together with a few buddies, not buds like in, smokable buds. Just to unwind, stay in touch, share intel. Because a big part of working shamanically is you do your own work, but then you sit with other people doing that work and you do intel sharing, and you bring different pieces to that puzzle. And you stay on top of things, because the whole thing of, to me, Gnostic intel, which is dealing with your Gnosis, is sharing it. Don't just, unpack to your best of your ability, but as soon as you can get somebody else who's doing similar investigations, well, let's say, okay, let's all put everything we got on the table and see what we got here. Hello, Lee. So now a warm greetings to all those both participating in the chat, to those who will watch this after the stream, and for anybody who does what I do on occasion and just lurks. Lurkers are welcome. And warmly greeted as well. And once again, let me just look in the camera and greet anybody warmly who watches this video and is never part of the live stream. Thank you for subscribing and viewing. So anyway, during, it's funny, I just gotten done with the stream, and others were doing some talking, and I just started, these ideas just started running into my head. And it's funny, one of the things I had written had written 2 weeks ago on my thing, and I get around, was the one of the things here was it? Oh yeah, the occult as a meme. I think I'll start there. Hello, Amanda. And in many, I put occult as a meme, but in many ways, the word occult in the truther New Age milieu is, in many ways, more often than not, almost used as clickbait. There are a lot of things that are still being referred to as the occult that aren't hidden in the least. Some people might call, Crowley's book, it's like his books that he wrote on Thelema, call that the occult. What's so hidden about his books that anybody can get? There is a lot of material that is currently still being called occult that isn't hidden from anybody. And if we do not start becoming a little more clear in our language, we will stay, our communications will remain garbled. And so, like, when I, because of the videos I tend to view, YouTube knows what we like to watch and will do their best to suggest other videos that will keep us on YouTube all day long. You got a list of to-do things, and YouTube would be happy for you to forget about that list and click on that next one of those many recommended things there. So as I look at the titles, and how often I see occult this, occult this, occult this, occult this, and then you tune in and it's like, there's nothing hidden here. And that's what the word occult means. And I just think, we should realize that there isn't much that is occulted. But one of the most occulted teachings on the planet is that the planet is alive, conscious, and responsible for the composing of our genome. That is largely occulted. It has been the most occulted, and it's why even when Dark Journalist is doing his X series on the mystery schools, and I really hold that the word mystery means my story, which is the individual part of our story, as opposed to his story. I'm going to get out of the chat for a minute so I can focus. There I am. So, I'll get my focus back. So mysteries, yes. So Dr. Journalist is doing an excellent job with learning about, tracking the X through what are now called the mystery schools. Rosicrucian, Masons, Theosophists, Anthroposophy. But these are the mysteries schools that arose after the occulting of the original goddess narrative. These mystery schools are not based in the goddess. And that's why, for me, they're not mystery schools. They're occulted history schools. They're dealing with... the oldest they kind of go back is into Anunnaki narratives. Anunnaki narratives are where the whole bloodline shit comes from. The whole, really, it's the bloodlines when kingship was lowered from heaven to earth. So it was in the Anunnaki times that certain bloodlines have a right to rule over the rest of us. They have the right to archon over the rest of us. Bullshit. It's a fucking narrative they made up and then imposed through weaponry. And basically what we see, you know, what there is just a different telling of a basically similar creation story to what you might find in many of the Sumerian tablets that you'll find in the Old Testament. And once again, it's about bloodlines. The Anunnaki stories, and to me the biblical narrative, are ways for bums, that would be royal lines throughout history, to claim that they have some heavenly right to not work like the rest of us. Bullshit. It was a created nonsense right. And it was an attempted takeover of the earth, fairly successful actually, with an inserted creation. And in both, once again, in both the Anunnaki narrative, a little bit more occult in the Anunnaki narrative, but it's hardly hidden in the biblical narrative when Cain goes out and marries somebody from the people who were already there. So it's very clear whatever happened in the Garden of Eden was an insert onto the genome of this planet. A corruption. And interestingly, who was that? I forget who I was listening to. I guess they were telling the story of Diana, one of the archontic women of the Greek myths. And it has to do with Ariadne, who she challenged to a weaving contest. And the human beat Diana. She wove better than Diana did. And so Diana, according to the myth, turned her into a spider. And there's multiple instances of these supposed superior beings challenging a human, getting whooped, and then doing something nasty to them for showing them up for the liars they were, for the posers they were. The anthropos, the human animal, the human species, has to realize who they are on this planet. And right now, the only narrative, the only one that really tells it like it is the Sophianic narrative. Okay, I'll take a little look at what's going on in the chat. Hello, Vernon. I'm happy you could join us. Okay. Yeah, the Anunnaki. Look, the Anunnaki do what royal bloodlines have done throughout their history. They create the history that they want. I mean, Anatoly Fomenko, with the use of, he's one who wrote history, science, or fiction, and he took one of the horoscopes of supposedly, I guess, the grandson of the great Yellow Emperor, one of the first emperors of China, supposedly 2500 BC or 3500 years ago. No, I mean, or 4500 years ago, depending which timeline you want to use. So supposedly this person lived, over 4,000 years ago, and when he ran it through a computer thing, it was like in the 1600s or early 1700s. So many of the royal lines are out and out bullshitting about their history to make themselves look like they, not only do they deserve it because it's the mandate of heaven, but it's always been that way. Oh, for millennia we've been here. They have no problem lying. They have no scruples. If they had any scruples, they wouldn't be able to make the kind of laws and kill the kind of people for insulting them the way they do. I mean, again, they're a vainglorious group. They're a bunch of clowns, pretenders, posers, and have been. The interesting thing is sometimes you'll hear when you read history, you'll hear things about what's called petty kings. Petty kings, P-E-T-T-Y. Petty kings are what the fake kings called regional leaders. People who, I guess through a certain amount of talent usually, were chosen by the people, and the people were quite happy to have them as their leaders. Because they looked out for them as like, you know, having a matriarch and a patriarch of your own family. And they didn't seek to take over the world. They sought to keep their kingdoms intact and take care of their people. When the ones who would rule the earth came along, they are the ones who would refer to these regional leaders as petty kings. And I believe that's one of the reasons why the Anunnaki story has been all over the internet is, and you know, when Zecharia Sitchin getting that ball running is because it pads, it kind of gives even greater depth to the biblical narrative. It's a companion piece. You know, people go, oh, you know, the Genesis narrative, it's a little bit childish. The Anunnaki narrative. Now, there's the scientific narrative. It's the same basic narrative. And that narrative is that some kind of off-planet beings who seem to have trouble even beating the locals in a weaving contest. You know, where they set up, where, in other words, that the Anthropos is their creation, as opposed to them coming up with a copy, arming the shit out of them, filling them with hate for anybody who doesn't believe the way they do, telling them to be fruitful and multiply, like a virus in a body without an immune system, and then go out and spread those shit-ass genes that were composed by these clowns. And that's why even for me discussing bogus stories about, you know, the Anunnaki created us, or, you know, Yahweh created us, whatever, to me this is like almost like... It doesn't disturb the Sophianic narrative one bit. If anything, again, the Sophianic narrative substantiated by having these creation stories, and then having people like Anton Parks speaking about there being all these other beings on, you know, like can-do humans, upright humans, upright enough that Cain was able to go out and marry one of them. I mean, what did he do? Go out and marry Homo erectus? So it's really obvious to me that the Sophianic narrative holds up, and that all these other narratives are, first of all, much later, and they're insertions into that narrative. Forceful insertions. Weaponized insertions. Okay, what's going on here? Hello, Shannon Kling. So anyway, so where's my paperwork? Anyway, I'm kind of rehashing a little bit of what I went through last week. All right, let me put on my glasses. Temporarily. Okay, I'm gonna where's that little bit on Gnosis? Really little. Here we go. Yeah, I wrote biblical narrative post divine bloodlines and exaltation of the thing. Rhymes with king. And then, of course, consecration to the demiurge through baptism and confirmation. I think if you want to get that stink off you, you can, I think one of the best ways is to go into some water, almost like they originally did, and let Mama and the water spirits know you want that funk taken off you. Unconsecrate me to that thing. This way here, if you suddenly pass from this mortal coil, nobody will think they have some rights to you. Because, oh, remember when they splashed some water on you here and you said these things? Well, of your own free will, especially that confirmation or communion process, you kind of gave your soul to us. Undo that shit. And then I wrote this here. Living our life, our action from Gnosis and looking for the afterlife as confirmation. That was me that was incredible shorthand. I'll unpack that a bit. I guess at least in certain shamanic traditions, there's the whole part of learning what we learn is so we can die a good death. And part of that is to be able to transition consciously and with agency. You're now at least moving more permanently, or at least for a good block of time, into a domain, another world that you're not unfamiliar with. Kind of like, I don't know, maybe you spend a lot of time scuba diving, and then when you die, you can now live underwater. Well, from your scuba diving experiences, you kind of have an idea of the lay of the land. But for myself, and I hope for a lot of people, the Gnosis that I'm proceeding from is, again, not a belief, but something that I have confirmed for myself, and then upon crossing over, I get to confirm my confirmation. So that's kind of what I was putting here, was that our Gnosis would lead to us living a life with the whole purpose that this is really your comprehension of the greater reality, and that you will get your confirmation when you cross over, when you die. And so that kind of really ties in the kind of cycles of birth, death, rebirth, death, where when we're on one side, we realize we're going to the other side, and so the way we conduct ourselves on this earth, there's actually a continuity when we leave the earth, because the planetary animal mother, the plenary sovereign intelligence, the wisdom of the earth, operates on both sides of that equation. So living with that intelligence alive in a way that can kind of just almost be picked up on the other side. For my earth walk, that's what works for me. And I believe that for a lot of Telestai and Rome and other Gnostics, I think that would be a part of how they're doing things as well. But I wanted to put it in language to kind of crystallize it a little bit, put into a little bit of focus. Because I have a term that some people might not find nice, which I call clueless in creation. And that means kind of we're navigating through creation and the world, which is a creation within a creation with a small c. And without a trajectory, not really knowing where we came from, fairly unsure of where we're going. Questions like, do you follow the white light or don't you follow the white light? To me, that is clearly a state of one doesn't know. There is no gnosis on whether to follow the white light or not follow the white light. And but for some people who have died fairly consciously, they're greeted by ancestors, because the ancestors aren't locked away in some heaven or some hell. They're in the afterlife, which is its own domain, its own world. And if we start allowing alien concepts like heaven and hell, especially, again, I mean, there's some interesting things with Bardos and Buddhist concept. I mean, again, we're talking about in the afterlife type of reality. There are a lot of different vibrational wavelengths, different energy settings. And I'm quite sure that energy setting best fits the kind of, fits the energy that goes there. But the reason why the ancients did what modern people call ancestor worship, as opposed to remembering the ancestors, and especially remembering the ones who accomplished some shit. It's real different when you kind of, and then of course there was also where rather than facing an angry God for some things you did on earth, what you might face is some disappointed relatives who go, after all we accomplished in our family, you pulled that shit? So, where you kind of like might live your life because you don't want to get an earful from your ancestors. A lot more organic and healthy that way. Then did I obey? It's basically the ancestors are we did a certain way, we've laid out a certain path, a certain way, a certain Tao here. So did you screw up our Tao? Not did you break our Torah, our law? So Gnosis, for me, is a way of living consciously and to the best of your own investigations, both into the phenomenal world and into the, let's call it, the shamanic space. That you're willing to say, okay, this is what my investigation has yielded to me, I haven't done it alone. I've shared it with other people. I will take my own counsel in the at the ultimate run, because I'm the one who's going to have to confirm that my gnosis was in fact correct when I cross over. I'm the one who's going to have to deal with it. But I do my best to unpack it, and part of that is with others, and a part of that is to share it. And that's how the mystery schools of the ancient world were developed, where multiple shamans doing what John likes to call Gnostic investigation. Okay? In other words, investigations of the world around us and in the above the natural or supernatural world, and putting that into a body of knowledge, a body of gnosis. And that's what the original Eleusinian mysteries were. The modern mystery schools are not derivative of the Eleusinian mysteries. The modern mystery schools are far more, in certain cases, can be almost like mystical Judeo-Christianity. In certain cases, more like esoteric Buddhism. But they're not the mystery schools. They're modern mystery schools, and not part of antiquity. Okay, let me come into the chat. That's an interesting okay. This is Fox Dre. Just watched a hidden video found on the Nemeta website within the Planetary Tantra department. Okay, I've been trying to watch every video there because I would love to enroll, but with my current, it would be irresponsible for me to enroll at this time, unfortunately. Financially irresponsible. Although if I had the wherewithal, be glad to. Oh, Jorge's here? Hello, Jorge. And hello, Calendal. Yeah, people don't care who the source of their life is. Yeah, that does seem to be the case. And that's why I came up with the term clueless in creation. Yeah, I know. Planetary. I've been availing myself of the Planetary Tantra, and it's quite a good. I think there's like 35 different categories there. The one thing though that I'm missing out a little bit on is he's now doing the Shakti, the lunar cycles. That is now part of for enrolled people. So I've been missing those briefings. I might be able to shoot John an email and get some kind of, update, but I'll get that figured out one way or another. Yeah, so Nemeta, actually, I have, I'm going to bring Nemeta up. I have it on a thing here. Nemeta is the Sophianic, the Sophianic School of Arts and Sciences, Nemeta. And on the front page, it has a 38-minute welcome message from JLL. And that's for anybody who wants to hear what John himself has to say about Nemeta. It's right on the home page of nemeta.org, Nemeta. It's in the description below. And in a minute, I'm going to have to get up and get myself some coffee, in which case I will be taking a brief away from the camera break. And that'll be right now. Be right back. And I also got my cup, so I won't feel, oh, let me see what we have here. Planetary alchemy, I like that. Sunshine on Sophia, or Sophia. Oh, I have a very good idea, Fox Stray, why I'm here. I'm sometimes, I have to remind myself. I mean, witnessing her correction is certainly part of it, but this world is so beautiful. This earth is so beautiful and sensuous, so delicious. Matter of fact, they were laying down some thick geoengineering in the skies here today, and to see the zephyrs and the sylphs in action, just ripping that shit apart, and the beautiful forms that they manifested while doing it. I mean, they left the skies, and the skies stayed blue. They tore this stuff apart, and again, watching the shapes they took and that wispiness that they often exhibit, it was beautiful to watch these, the spirits of the air, the elementals of the air, just ripping this fuckery apart. Hello, Madfinger. The life that unfolded from, the genome that brought about not only the anthropos, but all the animals on the planet. Life is sensuous. Not so much sexual, but sensuous. The taste of food, the smell of flowers, the touch of nice fabrics or very nice skin, the touch of one's lips on another person's lips or other body parts. The visuals, mountains in the distance, valleys, clouds, the green of trees against a cobalt blue sky, the feeling of the wind on our skin. There's just such beautiful sensuality. Even without deeper aspects, there is just a beauty to the earth. The earth, the biggest spoiler on the earth is the world, the legal system, all the systems. The ones who don't know how to mind their own business about an animal just enjoying the planet they were born on, or the earth they were born on. Butt-inskis. And why did they butt in? Because that was the whole point of their system showing up. They're interlopers. The spirit that has built the systems, that created the concept of the bloodlines, mandates of heaven, rulers. Yeah, Matt Finger, I'm glad you're here. I'm happy that anybody shows up, but I'm always happy to have the moderators, because once again, the moderators here are not for crowd control. It's just that very often they've kind of demonstrated themselves as complementing what I'm trying to do here. And, the whole idea of a telestic transmission is about an aimed transmission. And, it's funny, John Lamlife says, he is the Gnostic teacher on the internet. If there's another one, somebody could show them who they are. And in many ways, I feel like I'm probably maybe the only website or YouTube dedicated to the Gnostic teacher on the internet. And of course, I feel free to express some extra narrative ideas, but always with knowing that the narrative is pristine and must not be disturbed, because the narrative is what brought me the ability to investigate and tie in and make sense of some of these stories, and to know where the nonsense is, and also to go, oh, this is the history of the invasion. It's almost like, the Irish have their Book of Invasions. Well, for me, the Old Testament is another form of the Book of Invasions. Oh, I listen to I'm a subscriber to Miguel Connor on his AM Bite Gnostic Radio. I like Miguel. I don't agree with a lot that he says. I mean, because there was one time he was doing one of his intros and he referred to Gaia as this crappy little planet. It's like, dude, you're calling yourself a Gnostic and we're referring to Gaia as this crappy little planet? You've been reading the Nag Hammadi text undistilled for too long. And Miguel is a big, tends to go for the various quote-unquote gospels in the Nag Hammadi text. I mean, for me, there is no Gnostic gospels. They call them that, but I mean, the gospel means the good word. Yeah, well, I sometimes do skip through his intros. It depends on how it's going. Sometimes he'll hold my attention for a while. I'm not, again, I'm not a big fan of Hollywood. Anyway, I'm a, for me, what comes out of rectums needs to be flushed as quickly as possible, not duplicated. And I consider Hollywood to be one big rectum. Some pieces of undigested food do pass out, but I think it's best not to go recovering them. Hollywood is the continuation of narratives, the accepted narratives, and the insertion of what gets posed as novelty, but it's just twistings of an old narrative to make it look new, because they're not very creative. I agree with you, Windsor. I guess it was supposed to be 64 videos, but John will always give more. Like, he'll come on and go, okay, this is going to be a 30-minute talk, and it turns into a 58-minute talk. With John, you always get more. And I like that about John. John has, especially, in the years leading up to Nemeta, John has been exceedingly generous with his work. Very generous. I mean, meta history was so deep, and again, wasn't composed the way a normal webmaster might. So he said he had trouble finding things he knew he had written and put on there. But again, he's creator. He's creator of the material, and not necessarily the collator of it. And so it's really great that Nemeta has created a bit of some organization around him. I know that Ginny Thwaite, from what I can tell, is probably the main administrator. She's a woman with a mission, and her mission is to get John's work out there, or at least out there with the respect that it deserves. Yeah, the word Gnostic, I realized the way you went. Yes, the way I know Windsor. I thought the Mandela effect decoded that whole process that he went through. I found fascinating, and and that he always comes up with these playful terms like the probative factor, or call it your Snoopy factor, to do investigations. And of course, one of the proclivities of the human animal is curiosity. Curiosity is probably one of the stronger aspects of one of the things that gets exploited by marketing. People are, if you tout something that sounds really good, people are curious. They might even be curious enough to buy it. But one of the things that Fox and Dre, I always appreciate your astronomical and celestic information. And I really appreciate you always putting it into the chat. So to Snoopy or probative, probative, to stick your nose into something. Probative, proboscis is a nose. And the fact that all the clues don't mean anything unless you have an idea of the crime that was committed. Our story is our story. History is a crime. Largely the covering up of crimes. The fact that one cannot freshwater fish, at least in most places in the United States, if not all places, without a license, or have to pay a penalty. In other words, like fishing without a license is a crime? No. Requiring a license is a crime. Typical inversion of the archontic mindset. And archontic means those who want to rule others. Yeah, the Mandela effect, and I thought he did a great job. I mean, what seemed like just a lot of weird stuff with memories, that kind of what makes the Mandela effect what it is. I thought he took to me, for me and for many others, took all the mystery out of it. And again, it's because he knows the crimes, so he can look for the clues. The clues will make sense to somebody who's aware of the crimes committed. And those of us who have actually taken in the Sophianic narrative, until you take in the Sophianic narrative, one cannot assess what it means. One cannot investigate how that changes perception, how it changes, certainly informs Gnosis, and gives you a sense of true sovereignty that has nothing to do with names on papers, capital letters, and all the rest of that shit tied into the maritime nonsense. Thank you, Soul Traveler. And there are some bad actors on the planet, on the earth. I don't want to use the word planet because I never know if there's somebody out there who wants to have the flat or round earth argument. We all acknowledge we're on the earth, flat or round. I'm talking about the earth, because the problems that we have are the problems that we have. And the shape, for me, is not a problem. It's the fuckazoids. So that's why I like to use the term Earth. Because, once again, no matter what side of the shape argument we're on, we all use the word Earth. And that's where we are, and that's where our challenges are. And the Gnostic, the Sophianic narrative is about identifying who we are, knowing who we are, so that we can properly identify the challenges that we have before us. That we might, as one human species, see that we have the same problems, the same challenges together. Amoeba, you know something? Amoeba is a good. I've actually had little concept of almost like if you know the shape of a red corpuscle. Interestingly enough, Joe from the Carolinas, when he was kind of covering this topic, he picked kind of a corpus, more like a torus. If you had a torus and rather than the complete hole, you had a depression, you would have something that looks like a corpuscle or a red blood cell. And once again, I mean, I think those are discussions that, you know, are certainly part of our curiosity. They're going to come up. But whatever the shape is, the challenges are the same. Who's ever asking for that license as you try to pull dinner out of the local stream, that's the same problem, whether it's an amoeba, flat, or round shape Earth. So that's where, you know, where the focus comes. That's where the aim comes. Focus and aim, kind of synonyms. And that's what Telestai are, those who are aimed. And of course, while you're aiming, if you're going to be aiming some ordnance, you want to make sure that you have correctly identified the pathogens. And the pathogens will definitely take the form of human animals, but it isn't. It's about systems. It's about ideologies. The DNA of an idea. And then whether or not that ideology infects a human animal. Now, a human animal, we would like to think, can be made well again. But the ideology will stay a pathogen. So we have to know the pathogenic ideologies. And identify the pathogenic systems. In other words, that which is not a human animal. It may be composed of human animals, but the aim, where it all comes from is the ideology, something that isn't human. Something that is abstract, and whether or not that's a pathogenic abstraction or a wholesome abstraction. And nature herself is a great assist in knowing what is a pathogen. A pathogen would be something that interrupts a system. Like, when it's a pathogen in your body, messes up with the system of your, of your various organs and your homeostatic, the homeostasis of being a human animal. And then we have the only system that we should be paying attention to on this earth is the ecosystem, that which sustains all life. All other systems exist within the ecosystem, and as we can clearly see, many of these systems that take the form of governments are destroying the ecosystem. This identifies these systems as pathogenic. Not enough probiotics. And it's really important to know that which does not aid and abet the ecosystem or nature herself. That which we emerge from and that which sustains us. That which is our setting. And for me, that is really what the Sophianic narrative does, is it allows one to see the earth and the world setting correctly instead of a view that is in error. And then if we have had errors, and generally we will all have errors, and the part of our process is staying to correction, and when finding an error or stumbling into error, that we correct when that error is identified. And I feel that's an important language clarity of correction and error, because first of all, it works within the concept of a way or a Tao, not Taoism, the Tao, the way, as opposed to the law. There is a way to do things, and when we're doing them correctly, we're in resonance. And when we do them incorrectly, we're in error. And when one is in error, the proper thing is to correct, not to punish, not to get retribution, fines, and all the rest of that bullshit. To correct the error and get back in the way. In the way. Fox, one of the things that seems very, at least is part of my perception, is that obviously Pam, the planetary animal mother, Gaia Sophia, could clear this planet in a couple of nasty convulsions, or just her own relationship with the surrounding cosmos, call in another asteroid. I mean, she could clean up this planet real quick. But that would kind of like be using antibiotics, where you get rid of the infection, but you also kill a lot of good cells. So the real way that she's trying to do is, again, as John, as her intended person to get the the narrative that we need to identify who we are correctly in our and our role on the earth and in the galaxy, is that by becoming aimed, we become part of the immune system. And once she has an operative immune system, the pathogens can be dealt with. Like my song, Go to Your Room, we could call that the quarantine method. Yeah. Well, it seemed, yeah, I won't go there. But yeah, we are the Anthropos 10. If any of the, let's say Pleiadians, Arcturians, whatever, if any of that is correct, well then what we're dealing with in those instances would be Anthropos 9. I'm not sure all the 9 Anthropines extinguished themselves, but apparently they were fucking up. When Foxtrot, I don't know what your communion with her is like. I really sense that we have to there are certain aspects of the human animal, just like there are multiplicity of cells within the human body. Not all the cells are T cells or macrophages or white blood cells. There's a whole class of cells that, when properly functioning and not overwhelmed, keep the body clean and in homeostasis and make the body a sweet place for a spirit to be inside. But every proper functioning cell in the body will know a pathogen, and even if it can't necessarily do something about it other than maybe deny it, like a virus approaches a cell and goes, hey, I got some DNA I'd like you to reproduce, and the cell says, fuck off. Ain't buying your crap. So that's kind of like how a non-immune cell would work properly, is resisting. But then in that resistance, there's also the chemical communication that goes out to the body at large, and especially to the T cells. We have an interloper. We have trouble. And then through those chemicals, the T cells show up and deal with the issue. So I'm quite sure there probably is the agency where she could dream them away, but that would to me to take away from us a certain amount of responsibility. And in many ways, taking away that certain amount of divine responsibility, that downstepping of that aeonic consciousness into a biological form, but still having some aeonic sense about it. So we've been given this really great earth to unfold upon. Can we come into our kind of like our own aeonic agency within biology and take care of it? sensuality is a healing factor because it puts us back in touch with the animal that is part of nature. Sensuality is natural. And to deny sensuality, and this sensuality is the ability to, is enjoying a rose, enjoying a view. Sensuality can lead to sexuality, but this earth is a sensuous setting. It was made for our senses. You know, the whole setting is to delight our sense, the 5 or more senses we have, but especially the 5 senses. You know, the delight of drinking just really delicious spring water. You know, again, the scent of a rose, jasmine, whatever, you know, honeysuckle. The taste of an incredible apple or a dripping peach. One of those really red, super sweet watermelon. Eating it outside, letting it just drool down your arms and across your face, spitting the seeds out onto the ground. You put that very eloquently, Foxadre. Probably the only reason why I might be a little different there is because of indigenous oral traditions from like the origines of Australia. I can't really. I actually have difficulty discounting the memory of their earth walk. And once again, they're already here, so it doesn't disturb the Sophianic narrative, the Sophianic creation. And with the knowledge that there were other anthropines, and I'm not sure they were all wiped out, and they would have had a head start technologically, I find it plausible. So I'm willing to entertain it. And one of the things, to me, I'm not the greatest philosopher, but Aristotle did say a few things that made sense. You know, that the sign of an operating intellect is one that can hold an idea without necessarily accepting it. So I'm willing to take the originating stories out of Australia as, you know, a record of something that they experienced. And the reason why I'm open to it is because it doesn't disturb our creation, and to me, if anything, we kind of sit almost as a genomic bait, as Anthropos 10. Anybody who might be any of the Anthropos 9s that did not wipe themselves out throughout the galaxy and have developed, but have kind of stagnated. They want what we have, and I believe my sense, I will say, my comprehension of what we have above the any still existing Anthropos 9s out there is great wisdom. And the humor and the creativity that comes with it. Well, I mean, yeah, it's kind of hard. Yeah, Windsor, you know, it's looking, well, I don't know that there, Egyptian, I mean, if you want to call them, I guess, yeah, I mean, Gnostic to me, unfortunately for me, the word Gnostic, because people like Miguel Connor consider themselves Gnostics. Who am I to say that he's not a Gnostic? But that's why that's why rather than Can't You Hear Me Gnostic, I have Telestic transmissions. The Telesti or the Rome know who they are. And no Telesti or Rome would ever refer to Gaia as this crappy little planet, as Miguel did. People like Miguel seem to think that Philip K. Dick had greater insight into things than John Lamb Lash does. But it's looking very clear, because I've watched some stuff, Windsor, that it looks like the Dogon and the Egyptians, especially with the Egyptian mystery schools, or with the Egyptian cosmology, they certainly, I don't know if they share the same cosmology, but they share similar language for things. There's a linguistic connection between Egyptian and what the Dogon refer to things. I think Dark Journalist has covered that somewhat. Laird Scranton has done a great job with that. He's done, to me, he's done a great job with bringing data about other, another mythos. And I kind of covered that in my last stream, and because to me the two interesting mythos that's, to me, do not take away from that don't change a thing about the Sophianic narrative, is the Dogon interfacing with the Nomo, and the Australian Aborigines interfacing with the Pleiadians. In each case, they do start out with the Anthropos is here. And the Anthropos is now engaging with people who it appeared would be technologically further along. And again, if the whole Anthropos 9 experiment didn't all crash and there was still some remnants of it in the galaxy, they would have a timeline that was longer, which would allow for the technological developments, along with some other things. Yeah, and of course, sunshine on Sophia, not as John has on multiple occasions said, and I've also said it, Gnostic is a pejorative term. It was a term because the mystery school adepts were all claiming this gnosis that came about from the study of our story, which modern days call mystery. They knew the galactic history. They knew how we got here. So, and when people were starting to come up with some of these other crazy narratives, they would call them on it. So it was kind of like, so for the people who were, trying to get a crowd with their new crap, oh, here come the know-it-alls, basically. Oh, they know everything. So that's how Gnostic got started. It got started as a pejorative. It got started as like, oh, here come these people who think they know everything. So that's why I really like Telestai, because it's about aim, focus, and I like Rome, because apparently that was the Coptic word for the people of the original mystery schools. And that's what Nemeta is. Nemeta is a modern recreation of the original mystery schools. And, the School of Sophianic Arts and Sciences. Sophianic meaning wisdom-based. Of course, also Sophianic operates as a name for the aeon whose name was wisdom. Well, yeah, it will be. We need to recover our telepathy. My comprehension that the loss of telepathy began when these new narratives showed up, which were in complete, basically would kill you for upholding the old narratives. So I mean, back if we were all telepathic and we were saying, oh yeah, I believe in Yahweh and keep His laws, and meanwhile in your mind you're going, oh fuck this guy. If we were telepathic, that could end up with you and having a quick bad end. So I believe that telepathy collapsed when thought crimes became a reality on this earth. And thought crimes, certainly, I don't know if they were already there in the Anunnaki or Hammurabi's law, but it's very clear that from the moment Torah shows up, there are thought crimes. And telepathy needed to shut down quickly as a survival mechanism. And once the telepathy shut down, the lying began. That's another, Fox or Dre, that is complete, that is a very real possibility as well. Yep. But they're in each of these cases, especially in the Australian origine case, where the Pleiadians seem to be out and out suggesting a swap. It's like your genetics for our, I mean, you'll be, obviously you're going to get our genetics in the swap a little bit too, but it seemed to be like, Earth Anthropine genetics for Pleiadian technology. And the Origines themselves said they embraced the technology, and there was a period where they were very technological, and then they abandoned it because the Sophianic way was superior. They already knew how to get plants and nature to cooperate with them. They were a part of it, and they had the ability, the magic, so to speak, to get what they wanted from the earth. They didn't need technology. They didn't need to take a bunch of stuff out of the earth, use fire to convert it, build all kind, they didn't need all that. So by cooperating with nature to get what they wanted from nature, there was a lot more time to appreciate nature. Technology takes away from the appreciation of the sensuous experience of being in nature. The richness of that experience. But this one, what we just like now, this whole little back and forth is one of the reasons why I completely comprehend why John avoids these conversations, because they're they really can very quickly get distracting. The focus of a Telestai right now on Earth is getting rid of the pathogens. Out of a sense of compassion and love for each other and for what is wholesome and healthy. So this isn't really, to me, about we want to cultivate compassion, but the compassion has to be for what's good, for what's wholesome, for what's healthy, for what belongs in creation. And if we have that compassion for each other and ourselves and for what is sacred, well then we can get the focus to eliminate what is not sacred. And that's why I also don't use the word holy. I mean, the word holy, from my etymological study, is apparently derived from what the Druids held as sacred, which was holly. Holly was held as sacred by the Druids. And supposedly the way we get holy is from holly. But holly was sacred to the Druids, one group of people. So for me, a word of a plant that is only sacred to one group of people is not applicable to all the anthropos. But the concept of what is sacred, well, that's common to all the anthropos. The word, what is sacred, what is special, what should be held clean and preserved. That's a word we can hold in common. And then, of course, the word holy. I mean, this sweater I'm wearing underneath here, you can see some of the colors come through it because moths have gotten to it, and now it's holy. It's not sacred, it's holy. Well, that's kind of that's kind of what I'm experimenting with a little bit, is kind of what I would consider having inter-telestic conversations about those of us who've already have embraced the narrative, and we know that stays pristine, and that there's all these other little things floating around there. And I think if we discuss it amongst ourselves, we probably won't get too distracted. But I'm very aware that to go into that, because again, it'd be kind of hard for me to say that what I'm doing here is supporting JLL if I overly engage in things he doesn't do. But I mean, again, I'm giving myself some leeway, and also, exercising my own agency, but while holding the Sophianic narrative as something sacred and pristine. Her story is our story. So our story is my story, which people want to call mystery. Okay, we're getting to the end of this this transmission. Yeah, it is interesting, especially when part of what we telestics are doing is to enter in and holding being in the dreaming. So it's kind of funny to use terms like wake up or being woke. What a goofy term. When it's the dreaming we seek. Well, thank you for being here, Sunshine on Sophia. And Yeah, I know the word. I use the word. I've now been avoiding the word race with regard to unique genomes, because the word race involves a competition, and to me, the human species would get along better cooperating than competing. And the word race is a competition. Okay, I see I'm back. OBS had disconnected and YouTube had disconnected me, but I'm back. So so I guess, yeah, that's my that'll be the transmission for tonight. And again, I'm really looking at the words we use, because they have meaning. And so the word race, as far as applying to the human animal, is something I am no longer comfortable with because of how I'm interpreting that word. There's clearly different, unique genomes on the planet that some people call races, but I'm not comfortable using that word. And if other people want to use it, I'm not going to, I might, make my little spiel here, but I'm not going to say, oh, that's the wrong word. No, it's the wrong word for me. And I'm willing to share my thoughts on the word race and see what others think about that. And if maybe there isn't like some poison in that word that creates a competition within one species by positing the concept of races within the species as opposed to unique genomes. I agree, Tote. It would have been if I hadn't come back, I was going to say that's that. I agree with you. But anyway, so those are my. I didn't notice any misspellings, and I'm a terrible typer. Misspellings happen that would never happen when I write. So, and then of course there's the autocorrupt, as Madfinger likes to call it. I have to admit, autocorrupt is one of the things that when everybody's trying to scare me with AI, I'm gonna go, well, they must be holding back on the spell check, because all I do is leave out one letter that almost anybody would be able to make out, and the AI gives me suggestions that have nothing to do with the misspelled word. I mean, they give me all kinds of goofy things. And so I think, and it's, with that machine that the rulers named Sophia, if you notice, they named that Saudi Arabian a citizen of silicon and other garbage. The fembot. I forgot where I was going. So anyway, it's probably a good time for me to end, and people have taken me at my word that this is the end of the stream, and less people are watching. So I think I'm going to close it down now. And as I greeted all warmly when we began, I now warmly say goodbye until next time, both the live stream and for those who will be watching this transmission, not live. And I was caught off on the reading the chat. And so take care of yourselves. Stay as sane as you can define it for yourself, ourselves, and that'll be that. So let me close this out. Love to you all, and let's do some good work.